Today, we're diving into a really tough case. The story of Gabriel Fernandez,
Oh, absolutely.
an 8-year-old boy from Los Angeles who died in 2013.
Yeah.
And this isn't just about, one tragic loss, though, right? We're using court records.
Right.
We're looking at social worker reports. We're using firsthand accounts
Mm-hmm.
to really try to explore how these systems
Yeah.
that are meant to protect children like Gabriel
Yeah.
failed
Right.
so catastrophically, and most
Mhm.
importantly, what we can learn from it all.
It's a case that I think continues to resonate with people because it wasn't just a sudden unforeseen tragedy.
Right.
The sources that we have really reveal a painful truth.
Yeah.
There were so many points along the way
Mhm.
where intervention could have happened,
Yeah.
should have happened.
Right.
But those signs were missed,
Yeah.
misinterpreted, or tragically ignored.
To understand those failures, I think we kind of have to start with Gabriel himself
Absolutely.
before the abuse, Who was he? What kind of child was he?
It's easy to lose sight of the individual
Right.
when we get into discussions of,
Yeah.
legal proceedings and these big systemic issues.
Right.
But the sources paint a picture of Gabriel as, kind of a typical young boy,
Mm-hmm.
Born in 2005.
Okay.
He was described as loving to play, being affectionate,
Yeah.
just a normal kid.
A normal kid.
Unfortunately, Gabriel's early life was marked by a lot of instability.
Okay.
He lived with various relatives
Hmm.
and even spent time in foster care
Yeah.
because his mother struggled.
So there were already challenges from the start.
Yes.
And then in 2012,
Mm-hmm.
he was placed back with his mother and her boyfriend.
Right.
And that seems to be when things just took a horrific turn.
This placement decision, in hindsight,
Yeah.
represents the first in a series of missed opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
It was during this time that the abuse began and quickly escalated.
And we have to talk about the nature of this abuse. The reports detail beatings with belts, metal rods.
It's awful.
It's hard to even comprehend.
It was brutal.
Yeah.
The level of violence that Gabriel endured is just unthinkable.
Yeah.
He was starved, forced to eat cat litter,
Oh, my God.
and his own vomit.
It's just...
This wasn't simply physical abuse.
Right.
It was systematic torture and degradation.
What's even more disturbing is that Gabriel was attending school during this time.
Right?
Teachers saw his injuries.
Yeah.
They noticed changes in his behavior.
Yeah.
How could this have been missed?
This is one of the most frustrating aspects of this case, I think.
Yeah.
There were multiple instances where school staff saw Gabriel's injuries.
Right.
One teacher even noted that he appeared malnourished,
Wow.
covered in bruises and scared.
Oh, my gosh.
But when authorities came to investigate, Gabriel was pressured into lying, saying he'd fallen.
Wow.
This coercion, it really highlights just how deep the control and manipulation were in this situation.
Yeah, so the adults that were supposed to protect him weren't doing their job.
Right.
And it wasn't just the school, right?
Yeah.
There were also reports made to Child Protective Services.
Yes, numerous reports were filed
Okay.
with Los Angeles County's Child Protective Services.
Mm-hmm.
Social workers were assigned to Gabriel's case.
Yeah.
But their responses, according to the records we have,
Right.
were either completely inadequate or outright negligent.
Yeah.
And this raises a critical question.
Yeah.
What does inadequate even mean in this context?
Right.
What level of response would have been deemed appropriate
Mm-hmm.
and crucially effective in preventing further harm?
Right. It's like everyone was dropping the ball.
Yeah.
On top of that, we have law enforcement.
Right?
Our sources mention a 911 call in 2013
Mm-hmm.
made by Gabriel's mother herself.
Yeah.
Didn't that raise any red flags?
That call should have been a blaring alarm.
Right.
Paramedics arrived to find Gabriel unconscious
Wow.
with broken ribs, a crushed skull,
Oh, my God.
and extensive bruising.
Sad.
Unbelievable.
This wasn't a simple fall.
Yeah.
This was the horrific culmination of months of sustained abuse that, according to the source material, police had failed to adequately respond to on previous occasions.
It's unbelievable how many chances were missed to save this boy.
I know.
And the failures don't stop there.
Yeah.
Even medical professionals treating Gabriel before the fatal incident
Right.
observed signs of abuse. Burns, bruises.
Yeah.
Why wasn't more done?
This points to a systemic breakdown, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't just one person or one agency failing.
Right.
It was a collective failure.
Yeah.
If the school had communicated effectively with CPS,
Mm.
if CPS had flagged law enforcement,
Yeah.
or if doctors had been more assertive in reporting their suspicions,
Yeah.
Gabriel might still be alive.
It's infuriating
Yeah,
and beyond heartbreaking.
Absolutely.
But it sounds like the lack of communication between these different agencies was a huge factor, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
The investigation after Gabriel's death revealed a siloed approach.
Right.
Each agency had pieces of the puzzle,
Yeah.
but they weren't sharing information effectively.
Yeah.
This lack of communication allowed the abuse to continue unchecked.
Yeah.
Imagine a system where a teacher, noticing suspicious injuries,
Right.
could easily and confidentially share that concern with CPS, who could then, if necessary, coordinate with law enforcement.
Right. A much more integrated approach.
Exactly.
Tragically, it took Gabriel's death to bring all of this to light.
Right.
What happened next?
Well, Gabriel's death in May of 2013 brought the full horror of his abuse into the light. It led to the arrest of his mother, Gabriel Fernandez, and her boyfriend, Isoro Aguirre. They were charged with murder and torture.
And the boyfriend was ultimately convicted?
Yes. In 2018, Isoro Aguirre was convicted of first-degree murder with the special circumstance of torture, Fernandez.
Yeah.
After pleading guilty to second-degree murder to avoid the death penalty, was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Did this case spark any kind of larger response beyond just the criminal charges? I mean, this wasn't just a local tragedy.
This case resonated across the nation.
Yeah.
Sadly, Gabriel's case wasn't entirely unique in terms of systemic failures, but it garnered significant national attention, leading to public outcry over these failures in child protection and law enforcement. People wanted to know how this could happen. And more importantly, what could be done to prevent it from happening again.
So what changes, if any, came about as a result?
Well, the case spurred a wave of proposed reforms, particularly targeting child protective services. There were calls for increased accountability for social workers, improvements to training to better identify and respond to signs of child abuse, more rigorous investigative procedures, and, critically, better communication between all the agencies involved in child protection.
That last part seems crucial. You know, if the school had talked to CPS, if CPS had alerted law enforcement, or if doctors had reported their suspicions, maybe, just maybe, things could have been different.
That's the hope behind these reforms, right? The idea is to create a more holistic approach where everyone involved in a child's life is communicating, working together to ensure their safety.
So the big question becomes, have these reforms been enough?
That's the question we're going to grapple with as we continue this deep dive. We'll examine the specific reforms that were enacted and analyze whether they've actually made a difference in protecting vulnerable children.
It's a lot to unpack. And I think it's important as we move forward to remember Gabriel.
Oh, absolutely.
He was a real child. A life full of potential that was tragically cut short.
Absolutely. While this is a deeply disturbing case, it's also a call to action.
We have a responsibility to learn from these failures and work towards creating a system that truly protects our most vulnerable.
And that's where we'll pick up in part 2. We'll take a deeper look at those specific reforms enacted in the wake of Gabriel's case and examine their effectiveness or lack thereof.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too.
Let's delve into those reforms that were enacted after Gabriel's death. Remember, there was a massive public outcry. People demanding to understand, how this could happen, what could be done to prevent it from happening again.
Because it felt like every agency involved, the school, child protective services, law enforcement, even medical professionals had opportunities to intervene and to help Gabriel, but didn't.
Exactly. And that's what these reforms were designed to address. One key area was increasing accountability within child protective services. California implemented new laws
requiring more rigorous background checks and training for social workers. Specifically focused on recognizing and responding to signs of abuse. But what does more rigorous actually mean? It's not just about checking for a criminal record. We're talking about in-depth psychological evaluations. Really assessing a candidate's ability to handle these incredibly challenging situations with empathy, professionalism, and a keen understanding of the subtle signs of abuse.
So it's about ensuring that those tasked with protecting children have the right temperament, training.
Absolutely.
Makes sense.
But it wasn't just about individual social workers. The reforms also aimed to improve the system itself. California increased funding for CPS, which allowed them to hire more caseworkers, reducing those individual caseloads.
Okay.
The idea was that if caseworkers had fewer cases,
Right.
they could dedicate more time and attention to each one.
Less burden on individual workers, which could theoretically lead to more thorough investigations.
Exactly.
Did the reforms address that lack of communication between agencies too?
Yeah.
That seemed like a huge factor in Gabriel's case.
That was a major focus.
Okay.
The reforms pushed for better data sharing
Okay.
and communication protocols between CPS, law enforcement, and medical professionals.
Oh.
The goal was to break down those silos we talked about,
Right.
ensuring everyone had access to crucial information. Imagine, for instance, a secure online platform
Okay.
where a teacher who's noticed a pattern of bruising on a child
Right.
can easily and confidentially flag that concern to CPS,
Right.
who can then quickly check if there have been any other reports or calls concerning that child or family.
Okay.
Then, if necessary, they can loop in law enforcement
Right.
for a coordinated investigation.
Wow. So much more streamlined and integrated approach.
Right.
It sounded like a huge step forward from what we saw happen in Gabriel's case.
On paper, it certainly seems that way.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just California.
Right.
Gabriel's case sparked a national conversation,
Yeah.
leading to calls for similar reforms across the U.S. Many states began to reevaluate their own child protection policies,
Okay.
looking for ways to prevent a similar tragedy from happening within their borders.
It's interesting how one tragic case can become a catalyst for such widespread change.
Absolutely.
But that still leaves us with the big question.
Right.
Have these reforms actually been effective?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
And unfortunately, it doesn't have a simple answer.
Okay.
There has been some progress.
Okay.
Studies have shown that in the years following Gabriel's death, there was a slight decrease in child fatality rates attributed to abuse and neglect in some areas.
That sounds encouraging.
It is.
Yeah.
And many child welfare agencies report improvements in their internal processes and interagency communication.
Okay.
And there's always a but.
Yeah.
Systemic change is incredibly complex, and it's slow.
Yeah.
While there have been positive steps, many argue that these reforms haven't gone far enough.
In what ways?
Well, for one child, welfare agencies are often still chronically underfunded and overwhelmed.
Okay.
There's simply not enough money to adequately staff these agencies, leading to caseworkers with incredibly high caseloads.
Right.
And when you're juggling dozens, sometimes even hundreds of cases, it becomes incredibly difficult to give each one the attention it deserves.
So even with better training and communication systems, if caseworkers are still stretched too thin, there's a risk that crucial details could still be missed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's the issue of burnout. This is an emotionally taxing job.
Yeah.
Caseworkers are constantly dealing with horrific situations.
Right.
And the stress takes its toll.
Yeah.
High burnout rates mean experienced caseworkers leaving the field,
Right.
further exacerbating the staffing shortage.
It sounds like a vicious cycle.
It is.
Are there any proposed solutions to these challenges?
Some advocates are pushing for more sustainable funding models for child welfare agencies. Instead of relying on year-to-year budget allocations, they argue for dedicated funding streams that would allow agencies to plan long-term and invest in things like staff retention programs, mental health support for caseworkers, and more robust training programs.
So ensuring these agencies have the resources they need to function effectively and support their staff. It sounds like we're talking about a pretty significant investment.
It is, but the argument is that investing in prevention and early intervention ultimately saves money in the long run. Think about the costs associated with responding to severe cases of abuse. Medical care, foster care, legal proceedings, and the lifelong impact of trauma on the child. Addressing issues early on, preventing them from escalating into crisis situations, could potentially save significant resources down the line.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's about shifting our perspective. Right?
Absolutely.
Seeing child protection as an investment in our future. Not just an expense.
That's a key point.
Yeah.
And it brings up another important question. Are we focusing on the right things? Some critics argue that our current system is too reactive. primarily focused on intervening after abuse has already happened.
Okay.
They advocate for a more proactive approach, investing in preventative measures like family support programs,
Okay.
parent education initiatives,
Yeah.
and accessible, affordable early childhood education.
So instead of just trying to catch abuse after the fact,
Right.
maybe we should be focusing on building stronger families and communities in the first place.
Absolutely.
What would that look like in practice? So we were just talking about a more proactive approach to child protection.
Right.
One that focuses on prevention and early intervention. What does that look like in practice?
It's a really fascinating shift in perspective.
Yeah.
Instead of solely focusing on catching abuse after it's already happened.
Right.
Preventative measures really aim to create environments where abuse is less likely to occur in the first place.
Yeah.
And it's really about addressing those root causes that we touched on earlier.
Right.
Poverty,
Yeah.
lack of support, and just the immense pressure that parents are often facing.
So it's about tackling the problem upstream, so to speak,
Exactly.
rather than waiting for it to become a crisis.
Precisely.
Okay.
One area that's showing a lot of promise is home visiting programs.
Okay, tell me about those.
These programs involve trained professionals,
Okay.
nurses, social workers, early childhood educators,
Okay.
visiting families in their homes, and offering support, guidance, and resources.
So it's like a proactive support system
Right.
for families who might be struggling
Yeah.
before things reach a breaking point.
Exactly.
Okay.
They can help with a whole range of things, from parenting skills and child development to connecting families with essential services
Yeah.
like healthcare and food assistance.
It's about building that strong foundation
Right.
and preventing problems from escalating into abuse or neglect.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You mentioned parental stress earlier.
Right.
Are there programs specifically designed to address that?
Absolutely.
Oh.
There are programs that offer parenting classes, stress management techniques, and even respite care to give overwhelmed parents a much-needed break.
Okay.
Imagine a parent
Right.
who's juggling multiple jobs, struggling to make ends meet, and feeling completely isolated.
Right.
Providing them with tools to manage that stress and a safe space to recharge
Yeah.
can make a world of
It
difference.
sounds like a more holistic approach.
Right.
Recognizing that parents need support too, not just blame or punishment.
Exactly.
And it's not just about individual families, right?
Right.
There's also a growing movement to address those systemic issues that contribute to child abuse, like poverty
Absolutely.
and lack of access to quality, affordable childcare.
Think about it.
Yeah.
If a parent can't afford safe, reliable childcare,
Right.
it limits their ability to work and provide for their family.
Yeah.
It can create just a constant state of anxiety and instability.
Right.
Addressing these issues through things like affordable housing, living wages, and subsidized childcare can make a huge difference in reducing stress and creating more stable home environments.
So it's about recognizing that child protection isn't just about responding to individual cases of abuse. It's about creating this societal framework that supports families and prioritizes the well-being of children.
Precisely.
And this brings us back to Gabriel.
Yeah.
It's impossible to know for sure,
Right.
but it makes you wonder if some of these preventative measures might have changed the course of his life.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
Could early intervention,
Right.
family support, or addressing those underlying issues his family faced have made a difference.
It's a haunting thought,
It is.
and one that really underscores the importance of investing in these preventative approaches.
Yeah.
But it also highlights the complexity of the problem.
Yeah.
There's no one-size-fits-all solution,
Right.
no magic bullet.
Even with the best preventative efforts,
Right.
we're still going to have cases of abuse.
Absolutely.
That's why it's so crucial to continue strengthening those reactive systems,
Right.
CPS, law enforcement, medical response,
Yeah.
while also investing in those upstream solutions.
Right.
It's about striking that balance, right?
Absolutely.
Addressing both the immediate crisis and the underlying conditions that contribute to it.
Yeah.
It feels like a massive undertaking.
It is.
Yeah.
It requires a societal shift in how we view child protection.
Right.
It's not just the responsibility of social workers
Right.
or law enforcement. It's a collective responsibility that we all share.
Right.
We need to be more aware, more vigilant,
Yeah.
and more willing to speak up when we suspect that something is wrong.
Right.
If you see something that concerns you,
Yeah.
don't hesitate to report it.
Yeah.
It's better to err on the side of caution.
What stands out to me from everything we've discussed is that real change requires action on multiple levels,
Yeah.
individual,
Yeah.
community, and systemic.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people listening might be thinking,
Right.
what can I, as just one person, actually do?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
It can feel overwhelming to think about tackling such a complex issue.
That's a fair point. But even small actions can make a difference.
Okay.
Start by being informed.
Okay.
Learn about the signs of child abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Support organizations that work to prevent child abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Advocate for policies that strengthen child protection systems.
Those are all things we can do on a larger scale. But are there things that we can do within our own communities?
Absolutely.
Our own circles?
Being present and supportive
Okay.
in the lives of children and families in our own communities can create a safety net that helps prevent abuse before it even starts.
Okay.
Something as simple as offering to babysit for an overwhelmed parent.
Mm-hmm.
Lending a listening ear to someone who's struggling.
Yeah.
Or donating to a local food bank can have a ripple effect.
Yeah.
Remember, strong families build stronger communities,
Right.
which in turn creates a safer environment for all children.
It's a reminder that we all have a role to play.
Absolutely.
That even small acts of kindness and awareness can have a ripple effect.
Indeed. Gabriel's story is a tragic one,
Yeah.
but it also serves as a powerful call to action.
Mm-hmm.
Let's honor his memory by working towards a world where every child is safe, supported, and given the opportunity to thrive.
Thank you for taking this deep dive with us.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
It's been a heavy topic.
Yeah, but an incredibly important one.
Absolutely.
We hope this has left you with a deeper understanding of the complexities of child abuse and the various approaches to prevention and intervention.
I think so.
And to you listening, we leave you with this. What can you do in your own sphere of influence to make a difference?
Absolutely.
How can you be a voice for vulnerable children and contribute to a future where tragedies like Gabriel's are less likely to occur? We all have a role to play.
We do.
It starts with awareness, compassion, and a commitment to action.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.